All right, welcome back to Superhuman Customs. I'm Stephen Human. Today we have something that's going to be a little bit more involved. Okay, it's going to be a lot more involved. So a few weeks ago, I showed you my Purge figure, the big 12-inch, and I added the red line in the 3D paint. And then I kind of got the idea of making a Mcfarlane version of that character. That is my creation. And I'm a big believer in taking the creations that you guys, that we all made when we were teenagers or when we were kids, and now we have the opportunity to turn them into toys, to customize them. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I looked at all of the Mcfarlane toys, and obviously Purge has basically just a straight body. And the closest I could find that didn't have lots of textures or like the Superman sign built up on top was Martian Manhunter. So what I'm gonna do with this guy is we're gonna cut off this red portion, the X here. I'm gonna use the cape because Purge has the little like yellow pauldron things that hook onto the cape, just like Martian Manhunter. I'm gonna cut off all of this stuff. We're gonna spray paint him black, and then I'm gonna take this X part, because it actually travels all the way around his back, and I'm going to cut his little symbol out of it. And hopefully there's enough material here, I think there is, to have it go down his leg and then cut across his chest in the star pattern that I have. I'm very excited. So what I'm gonna do for the head is I got this Superboy Prime, and I'm gonna take the head and I'm gonna add a little bit of hair using the 3D pen that we did with Wonder Woman. And we're gonna add some hair to this guy, and then he is gonna be the head of Purge. We'll paint his hair brown. I'm very, very excited to give this whole thing a try. This is gonna take all of the skills that I've been building over the past couple of months and put them all together in one place, in one big figure transformation. So without further ado, let's knock this thing out of the park. All right, first things first is we're gonna add some extra hair to this guy, because Purge had, kind of like when I was a kid, he had, you know, the double curl here, not just the Superman curl. So we are gonna add that here, just like we did with Wonder Woman. And I think that will more or less work, because all I wanna do is just have that going down there to make it so he looks different. So that'll be painted brown with the rest of his hair. All right, first things first, we have had Martian Manhunter soaking in hot water, very hot water, for about 5 minutes. You can even go as little as 2. It's not really that big of a deal, but I kept him in for about 5 minutes. So all of his joints now are very, very malleable. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start yanking him apart. And he comes apart really easily. That's the beautiful thing about these Mcfarlane figures. And so you just start pulling them apart. They come apart super easy. Take all the pieces out, because all these pieces are going to need to be painted black for Purge. So we want everything out. Come on. That's why I have this, because sometimes it helps get in those little things. There we go. Maybe. There we are. Yank his head off. All right, to get the little ball out, you just take your needle-nose pliers, pop it out, and it should pop right out. These are not the same size for every figure. So sometimes when you put a different head on with a different one of these neck points, it'll just look weird. Now with the legs, they can pop off like so, and then pop right back on. You can also, just with this, you can pop these off, but this came off really easily, so I am not going to worry about it. And then that comes off. And now see that this is all linked together. And so I think I'm actually going to cut this off. So I'm gonna see if I can peel off these. Ooh, perfect, look at that, comes right off. Oh, this is gorgeous. Look, it's just coming right out of those holes. That is so perfect. Let's see if we can get this one. Oop, it's coming, there we go. Ah, look at that. Look at that, so perfect. And on the back, it's got a bigger one on the back, you're gonna have to yank it. But it will come off. There you go. And here we are. My goodness, look at that. That is quite wonderful. Now let's see if we can get this off, because it's just glued around these edges too. This might need a little help from our good friend here. And once all this is off, you can kind of survey the damage.
I think this is going to work perfectly for my purge because I can put the cape right back in these holes without this. But with these holes, I'm not so sure now how this is going to work on Purge's body. So let's give it a look. You see here, it's in two places back here. Let's see if we can get that out. And don't be afraid to just put all your effort into it. And sometimes you're just going to have to do that. Some parts are going to be more difficult to get off. Now, I already know that if I can't salvage this, I'm okay, so I'm not going to freak out if it gets torn up, but I'm putting some real elbow grease into getting this guy off. But it is starting to work, because here we go, we're almost out. There we go. Boom. He is cleared off. All we gotta do now is scrape off some of this extra plastic, and then we can take a look at what we got. First, I'm gonna clean it off with an X-Acto knife. So basically I'm just going to take this and I'm going to just start scraping this off. It comes off fairly easily and you can get rid of all of it and then just tighten everything up. Then I'm going to use a little bit of fabric paint and I'll fill in those holes and smooth it out. Because remember, all this is going to get painted black anyway. So as long as I can kind of match the textures around it, I should be just fine. Oh, and look what I just found. I thought I was going to have to cut this off completely. It's just glued on. Look at that. I can yank it off. Oh, look at that. That's going to work so much better without this. I am so happy. That just made my life so much easier. Next, what we need to do is we need to fill in these two holes. Now I'm going to use fabric paint because, as I've shown before, fabric paint is just plastic. There is nothing special about it other than the fact that it hardens like plastic. So I'm just going to fill in these holes with the fabric paint. It will dry and it will be a slightly more supple plastic. So I'm just going to use my finger and try and smooth it out. I'm going to need some more for sure. But you can see how it will cover up. We'll fill this thing up, which is exactly what we want. And then we will have our chest. And I'll probably need to wait until this dries a little bit and then put a second coat, but it will dry plastic, which is awesome.
All right, we are out here in the garage and we are about to spray paint. So you can see I filled him in with the fabric paint, sanded him down, and I've got everything else laid out. I borrowed a few paints from Russ, our good friend who's showing me how to do all of this stuff. Some matte black, but I want this to be glossy, so I got some glossy as well. I got a clear glaze that I'm going to be using, and I got some red spray paint for the cape. So that's what we're going to be doing, is spray painting this. I also got some brown, so I'm going to be doing the hair in just a minute, so we'll move into that. So let's get spray painting. All right, here we go with the matte black. Smells like spray paint, guys. Super smells like spray paint. They're looking pretty good. I'll let them dry for a little bit before flipping them over. Sam, what do you think about this?
I think it's cool.
Oh, that is like... that is splotchy. I have a feeling this is just empty. All right, so the red was empty and it kind of sprayed really funky. I couldn't really get it off, so we're gonna have to deal with that later. But the black has gone on very nicely. So let's go ahead and move inside and work on the hair while this is drying. All right, for the hair, I'm going to use this brown old boots color that Russ let me borrow, and we will see if that gives me the look I want. It seems to be a darker brown, so we'll see it. Let's go ahead and move on to the head. All right, here we go. The curl turned out really nice, and now let's go ahead and just start making him brown, because Purge has brown hair, not black hair. This seems to be going on nice. I tried to use that mud on his hair. It did not work. It kind of made it kind of brown, but not really at all, as you can see. So this is working much, much better. And I'm very happy with the look. So let's just keep going on it. All right, I've moved on to using the magnifying glass and using a slightly smaller brush for some of the detail work. I kind of was under the impression that I could use the thicker brush and move all the way through, but there is some that brush has seen better days at this point. And when it comes to like really big stuff, it works just fine, but it's got some stray bristles and things now, and I just don't want to make a mess out of this guy. So I moved to a much smaller brush,
and it's working very nicely. And then I always I forget about my magnifying glass, and it really does just make everything easier. And I super duper enjoy it. So he's starting to look really good, getting into these curls here. He's looking like Purge, and that is epically awesome. Brown hair is looking good. I was able to get the eyebrows with that really small brush, and he is looking very nice. Exactly the way I wanted him. Longer hair and brown. As you can see from the original pictures, Purge has red eyes. So I am just going to try and get one little dot in here. I don't want to make his eyes completely red because of the fact that these eyes are so very beautiful. So I'm just going to try and get in here. I'm going to try and hold it really steady and get it so that we have just a red dot on his eye. And let's see if we can do it. Oh, Sam's going to come in and watch me do it. My hands are shaking. I'm so nervous. Okay, let's try it here. There we go. Ooh, close. Okay, we got one. Might need some wiping. Yeah, it's gonna need a little bit of wiping. All right, I got a little bit above his eyes, but what I've been doing is I've taken this razor blade and I've actually been chipping away at it, and it's actually turned out pretty good. So now just his pupil is red on this eye. So remember, if you screw up, it's not a tragedy. There are things you can do. The paint scrapes off. It's not, you don't need to stress out about it. If it's not quite perfect the first time, scrape it off and try again. So you can see he now has red eyes. He's looking good.
All right, spray painting's all done. I put him back together and he looks pretty good. Obviously, these little spots here are gonna be covered because the cape is gonna snap back in. I'm excited to see how that looks. Now, I wasn't originally gonna spray him with the sort of enamel, the shiny enamel, but because he was shiny enough for me as it was. But I needed to patch up some spots in here where the spray paint just couldn't get with my standard matte black paint, and it really turned out matte. Like, this was supposed to be matte, and it didn't. So I did spray him so that he would have consistency in his texture. He looks really good. He still has full range of movement. He is still an action figure. That's what I want. And so now we are going to move on to the cape. Now, as you can see, the spray paint obviously did not work out the way that we wanted. There wasn't enough in there. It just kind of splattered. It also is still quite sticky, and this is several days later. I've let it dry. So what I've done is I took craft paint and I ran a test right here, and I took my regular, so my Model Air paint. I ran tests. They turned out to look almost exactly the same. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run the craft paint first because it'll give solid coverage, and I've got more of that than the more expensive paint. And we will go from there, and hopefully this will work out with the cape.
All right, I am using the biggest brush I have. I just want coverage here. This is what I'm going for. And so I'm gonna just lay this on nice and thick and quick because I'm gonna have to do a second coat anyway. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay down this craft paint, and then I'm gonna do the second coat with the other paint, with the better paint. And just see how we get, because this will give me just quality coverage over the top of this really crappy spray paint. I mean, the spray paint wasn't crappy. The experience was crappy because of how it happened, because there wasn't enough and it sprayed. And I don't know if the composition was screwy or what, but it just, yeah. Now, when I'm putting this on, when I was running my test yesterday, I did not like this color. It was a little bit too maroon, and I was like, huh. But then when it dried, it actually ended up looking exactly like the spray paint and the more expensive paint. So that's why I decided to go this route. Even though right now it looks a little bit off maroon, which is not what I want, it dried perfectly red. So I'm going for it. And that is the real importance of testing, of running tests on all of this stuff. Just picking little spots of your paint so that you can see how things are gonna turn out, because sometimes you'll be like, oh, that's not gonna work, and then you give it a little try and you're like, oh, that will work, and it might just make your life a little easier, so don't be afraid to do that. All right, the cape is drying. I put another coat of paint on it. what I'm gonna do now is since I want this figure to look as much like a factory Mcfarlane as possible, I'm gonna take what's left of John Jones's little cross thing that goes across his chest, and I'm gonna try and cut it into the strips that go down Purge's chest and leg. So I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm gonna cut off some of this right here. This cuts pretty easily. And so I'm just going to cut it like so. And then I'm gonna take a ruler and I'm gonna try and cut as straight as humanly possible. This is gonna be, again, another little bit of experimentation because I've never done this before. But I'm gonna try and lay this down, and it kind of arches a little bit because it went over his shoulder. But I'm gonna try and get it so that I can actually cut straight along this ruler and get it as long as possible. And I can actually get it pretty long. So we will see if I can do this. So I'm just gonna press it down, cut through it. It cuts nice and easy, which is great. Because if I can get a straight shot with this, then I can cut the rest and have it be exactly what I want. All right, so there we go. That is a straight line. Let's see if I can get it on the other side as well, all the way up. Now's the moment of truth. Let's see if we can do this and get it so that it is in fact straight. All right, that turned out pretty good. So what this is gonna look like is this is gonna come down his chest like so, and then go all the way down his leg. The lucky thing is that I'll get to cut it at certain spots, and so this will be long enough to get here, and then we'll have to work about his leg, and hopefully we'll have enough material to be able to pull that off.
All right, moving right along, you can see I've got the cape glued on. It went in just perfectly right back into those holes. And the paint job I feel pretty happy with. I couldn't get it like perfect because the spray paint obviously didn't work, so I had to hand paint it. But I'm okay with the different texturing because it makes it look a little bit more like fabric. I'm not one of those who's like, oh, it has to be perfect. For me, perfection doesn't exist. And so if you look here on the cape, he's got a little bit of texturing. Because it's on the plastic and I was using, a mixture of craft paint and then the standard paint that I use for miniatures, I did a clear coat on it to make sure that everything, is not gonna chip off. So it's on there now, it's looking good. Now let's go ahead and move on to the symbol. So I've cut that out, and let's finalize this Purge figure. All right, here we go. So what I'm gonna do first, I'm gonna kind of lay this out and see where I want it to go. I want it to hook up to the cape right there. And then come down, I'm gonna cut this at each of these points, but I'm gonna have to glue them on individually. So here is the moment of truth. I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty dang nervous right now about doing this. I'm using super glue, and so I will have a little bit of time to where it will not, where it can be movable, but I know that it will affect the paint underneath and all of that stuff. So, all right, I just put enough glue on to glue this first point, and let's get it on there. I want it to come down like this over the bicep. So it looks like it's spaced where I want it to be spaced, and it's staying. So that looks pretty good. The next moment of truth is the cut here. So I'm gonna go a little bit below the chest area there. Let's go nice and soft. I'm trying not to, again, at this point, anything I do is going to affect him. All right, so that then cuts him there. It extends a little bit below, so that, because I still want him to be a toy, I still want him to move. So a lot of this is gonna come down to me just cutting at the right point. So keep your fingers crossed that I'm not screwing this up. Now what I'm gonna do right here with this point, because obviously when I shift him, you're gonna be able to see underneath his torso there. So what I'm planning on doing is taking just a little bit of the red paint that I used to paint all of this stuff and put it up in there so that when he bends, you're no longer gonna see, it won't just be black under there. You'll still see some of the red. That's what I want because I think that will affect it. So there we go, okay. Whew. It's happening, slowly but surely, it's happening. All right, next. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get them before the glue sets into like these biceps, into the creases, because what that does is it just gives it more contact area. And so that just makes it that it's more likely to stay and stick and not come off, because you're not having areas that are poking up. They're all touching, and that is what I want. And I also don't want to get my fingers stuck. So I'm trying to use my fingernails just as much as possible on this. Just pushing down on these areas, getting so they'll stick. And I'll allow these areas just kind of to go back over because they look like they're doing good. I'm going to concentrate right here and hold it so that it will stay. And so far it's worked. Everything's stayed on, everything's gone in place and dried. And once I've got this and then this little bit right here, I'm just gonna have to do a little bit of touch up. I'm gonna put some paint in here and make it so that those seams are less noticeable, and we will go from there. All right, everything's in place, the glue has dried, but I don't like some of these seams. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna experiment a little bit. I'm gonna take some of this fabric paint, and I'm just gonna kind of put it over the top here and mush it around a little bit to smooth things out. So remember, the fabric paint comes out, it comes off pretty easily once you have it on, so it's not as big of a risk as you might think to get all of this kind of matching. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint over all of this and make it so that all of it matches, because at this point, you know, that I had some of these painted and some of them not. So now we'll be able to get that so it's solid and then go all the way through and make everything match. Now remember, in these areas in here where you can see, I'm going to add a little bit of paint, a little bit of red, just to make it so that it doesn't stand out so much, just in case I want to put him in a position where he, you know, shows that off. So I'm going to just get that like so. Let's go ahead and get in these spots and clear up where we see the glue. It's just added enough of a kind of faded color that we want to get rid of that. So let's just cover all these and then see how it looks. I think it's going to be too muted. It's going to be too matte. And then we can add our, we can go ahead and add that enamel to it after. All right, one more spray of gloss on this guy because the paint, the black paint, did turn out very matte and it didn't match the rest. But after that spray, take a look at this. He is finally done. I am so proud of him. To me, he looks like he came off the shelf. Like this was a factory-made Purge figure. His little symbol here being raised from the rubber on John Jones just is awesome. It's glossy. It looks absolutely gorgeous. And I am so happy that I now have a 7-inch figure of a character that I created when I was 15 years old. Purge has been a part of my life all that time. He's always in the back of my brain. I want to do comics of him to this day. And now I have another little chunk of inspiration. I am so pleased with this. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. This was a much deeper dive than we usually do. And I was able to just experiment with so many different things. I know going forward, I'm gonna be able to do an even better job as I go deeper and make bigger changes on some of these figures. I hope you do the same and that you think about the characters that you created when you were a kid and maybe take some time to make them in 3D as well. Well, I'm Stephen Human. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, tell your friends that they're action figure fans, and let's just have a ton of fun creating our own figures. I'll see you next time.